Hello there, and a very warm welcome to our webinar. This session is Get Your Payroll Done, where we're going to talk you through a typical pay run in Sage 50 Payroll. This is one of our webinars in our National Payroll Week webinar series, meaning that if you attend this session live, plus another two of our main sessions and the quiz, you will qualify for a digital badge. And we're going to tell you more about that badge later on. My name's Duncan. I will be co-presenting today's webinar alongside my colleague, Sarah. Let's now take a look at what we'll cover in the webinar. So I'm going to start things off with a quick look through our preparation checklist, outlining some tasks that you should complete before you process your pay run. I'm then going to hand over to Sarah, who's going to give us a full demo of the payroll process, including entering your payments, producing pay slips and reports, and submitting your full payment submission to HMRC. I will then return to take you through the month-end checklist, including how to run a P32 and, where required, submit an employer payment summary. And then we're going to run through some of the further support that's available, tell you more about our digital badge, and give you a chance to look through questions and ask any final questions that you might have. So let's get things underway with a quick look at a preparation checklist. And for this checklist, we have 4 tasks to complete before we process our payroll. The first of which is to add any new starters that have joined you since the last payroll that you ran. If you came to our starters and leavers webinar, which we ran yesterday or last week, you'll know more about the process for adding new starters, but I have linked to our guide, which contains some useful step-by-step information if you need it on this checklist. Step number 2 is to enter any statutory absences that will require a statutory payment, for example, sickness, maternity, or paternity. Step 3 is if you have any employees who are not currently working, we recommend you put them on hold, which will prevent them from being included in your pay run, but will also allow you to submit their details in an FPS to report them as irregularly paid. And the final step is to check for any tax code or student loan notices that you've received to your secure mailbox if you receive notifications online, or if you still get paper notices in the post, make sure you have actioned any tax code or student loan notices that you may have received in advance of your pay run. So I've already completed those steps, but I want to show you a few things in the demo just to explain how I've prepared before we hand over to Sarah. So let me just share my screen where you can see I'm already logged into Payroll. In today's demos, we're going to be running a monthly payroll where our employees are paid on the last day of the month. And to prepare for this process, what I've already done is I've created an employee record for a new starter. So this was my new starter, employee 12. See, their start date is the 11th of September. And I've already been through and entered their starter form details. So we've got them on the appropriate tax code for a new joiner. We also have an employee currently receiving a statutory parental payment. So this particular employee is in the middle of some maternity leave. And if I just take you to the absence details and then click the SMP option, you'll see that that actually started back in February of this year. And checking the entitlement, they are due to be paid some statutory maternity pay this period. So I've checked that I've got those absence details entered. I do have a seasonal worker who last worked in June, so they have been placed on hold until the next time I need to pay them. So I just want to show you where you can set the on hold status. So it is within the employee record. It's on the employment tab. And we've set this status to on hold, and they've been included in an FPS explaining that they are irregularly paid. And then the next time they do need to be paid, when they come back to work for us again, we can change that status back to OK. And final thing I could do is to check for any tax code notices. So if you go to your e-submissions tasks, if you receive these notices electronically, you can go into your IR secure mailbox, just using the link just here, and always worth checking for any new notices, where it will then connect to your PAYE online account and it will show you anything that you might need to action this period. And good news for me is that I don't have any new notices, so I don't have any further changes to make. So that is us all set up and ready to process our payroll. And for the next section of the webinar, I'm going to hand you over to Sarah, who's going to take us through a demo of the payroll process. So it's over to you, Sarah.
Thanks very much for that, Duncan. Now it's time to get into the main 5 steps of processing your payroll. So these are the steps that we're going to focus on when completing a pay run in Sage 50 Payroll. There are some other steps that you might complete, but we're just going to be sticking to these basics today. So that's setting your processor date, entering your payments, generating your pre-update pay slips and reports, updating your records, and submitting to HMRC. So the very first step of your payroll process is setting the process date. So this is the date your employees are going to receive their pay. HMRC's advice around this is to use your normal or your usual pay day as your processing date, even if you're going to pay your employees early due to a bank holiday or weekend. What we'll do is we'll jump into payroll, have a look at the first couple of steps of processing your payroll. So we're going to look at setting your processing date, and we'll take a look at entering payments as well. So I'm in my payroll now. I've got a monthly payroll. You can see I have my employee on hold that Duncan added. I've got my new starter that Duncan added as well. The very first thing I want to do is change my processing date. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can follow the tasks in your payroll. Oh, let me just get that back up. So you can use your tasks down the left-hand side. They will be in chronological order. So if you've got the payroll option selected, you can go to change process date, and you can see that's the very first one of the process. Or if you're more of a visual learner, then you can use the process map as well. So you can flag the process map by going to view, just right up at the top of your payroll. And then change view and select process map. And this will get that up at the bottom there. So you can see it's a bit more visual than your tasks down the left-hand side. But same again, change process date is at the very start of that process. You can see as we go along the process map, we've got things like your enter payments, your update records, and your full payment submission as well. So I'm going to just change my processing date and make sure that's correct. So I pay at the end of the month for my monthly employees. That's 30th of September. If you ever do want to double check this, if you've got the status bar visible, then you can check that in the bottom right. So you can see it'll show your processing date, your tax week, your tax month, and your tax year on here as well. If you don't have that, then you can toggle that on via the view bar as well. So you just want to go to view and status bar, and that'll make that visible to you. So I've checked my processing date. I'm happy with that. I've double checked it in my status bar in the bottom right. Some people at this point might reset payments. Just if you have hourly employees and you want everything to go back to default values in the record, then you might do this at this point. Same with timesheet entry. So you might use that to enter some of your hourly employees a little bit faster. We're just going to focus on the main steps today. So I'm just going to go straight into enter payments. So I'm going to highlight my employees and go into enter payments. Now you can see as we have an on hold employee, it's going to actually exclude them from this step. So you can see it'll deselect that on hold employee from the employee list. So that'll open up our enter payment screen. We'll have a few different things to note in here. So we've got our payments tab. So that's going to be the main tab that you're going to use to enter your payments. Same with deductions. We have a tab for any attachments, loans as well that the employee might have. We have a tab for SSP or parental leave. So if you want to quickly enter any sick pay, you would do it in here. We then have a summary tab. Now the summary tab is really important because it's going to give you a breakdown of everything that is going on in your current unupdated pay run. You also have your information tab. If you wanted more info around anything income tax and national insurance or any loans or pensions. You also have a notes section as well. Now, your notes you might use if an employee has an ad hoc payment that you need just a bit of a reminder to take off next period. If there's anything you want to note about that record in particular. So we'll have a look at the payments window. So you can see I've got my different pay elements for my employee on here. Now this is a salaried employee, but they've done some overtime. So I'm just going to pop some overtime in there. Now that's a factored pay element. You can see it's got a multiplier on. Do have a really good webinar on the webinar recordings of that. So if you haven't seen that already, make sure to check it out. Once you're happy with the information you've entered, you do have your key information along the bottom around your tax code, gross pay, your tax, national insurance, and your net. And you can hit on the Save and Next button, save that payment, and move on to the next person. I'll put a bonus in for my employee number 2. Take out my overtime for employee number 3. And then I get to my employee number 4. Now, if you remember, employee number 4 is actually on maternity pay this period. You can check that by jumping into my summary tab. And you can see got £802.20 of statutory maternity pay for this employee. Now, I have actually got the full salary in for this person. Don't actually want to pay them the full salary. So I just want to pay them the total of the £2,047.50 with the statutory maternity pay included. Now, a really easy way to do this from the summary tab is by going into your Makeup Basic option. Now, that will factor in the parental payment and essentially reduce the salary to accommodate it. So if I just go ahead and make up Basic for this employee, you can see it will ask me if I want to reduce the hours number value of the salary. I'm just going to say yes to that. And you can see straight away my pre-tax payments has went down to accommodate that £802.20 maternity. If I go back to my payments tab, you can see that that's actually reduced the salary down as well automatically for me. Now, just another really handy tip with your enter payments window is if you do want to jump into an employee record for whatever reason and you don't want to lose your place. So for this person, I actually want to go in to check a pension contribution. You can click on the employee button in the top left of enter payments. And that will bring you into the employee's record. So I can now go along to my pensions tab. I actually want to set the employer contribution to a fixed amount of the £70.69. I'm going to go into Manage Schemes, Edit, £70.69 in there. So I want that to be the same as they're on maternity. And when I save that change within the record and close, that will bring me right back to where I was in enter payment. So I've not actually lost my place by having to close entirely out and go back in. You can see if I go along to my summary tab and check my employer contribution, it's changed that to my fixed amount now as well. And I can just save and next and move on to my next employee. So I'm just going to keep on entering my payments. For my employees, Again, if you do have some hourly employees, it might well be that you use timesheet entry to enter some of these a little bit faster, but I'm just going to use enter payments for today. We then get on to our last employee, so employee 12, and if you remember, they're a new employee. So they actually started on the 11th of September. Now, I actually have a full salary in for them at the moment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you one way to work out a bit of a pro rata salary. Now, it's always worth double checking this, as it could be different how we work this out depending on the business, but I will just show you one way to do that today. So if they started on the 11th of September, I want to pay them for 14 days, and there's 22 working days in September. I'm just going to use this little calculator icon and do 14 divided by 22. You can see that'll pop a decimal in and lower my salary in pro rata rate. So I'm just paying them for what they've worked in the month. Again, this might be different depending on the employer, but it's just one way of doing it. So I'm happy with the payments that I've entered now. What we'll do, we'll just jump back to the slides just to go through a little bit of a recap of that. So we have set our processing date. Again, HMRC's advice around this is to use your usual pay date, even if you're paying them early because of a bank holiday or a weekend. We've then went through our enter payments. So we've just focused on enter payments today, but some people might reset payments if you've got some hourly values that need reset first. Also use timesheet entry if you want to quickly enter hours for your hourly employees. You would also run a pension assessment after you've entered your payments as well if you use our Sage 50 Payroll Pensions module. If you don't, then you would do your assessment manually. But we do have another webinar on that coming up later this week as well. So make sure to get signed up for that. That's tomorrow at 10 AM. We then looked at our enter payment screen. So we've got our hours, number and rates values all in the middle section for your payments and your deductions. We've then got tabs for attachments, loans, any absences and your summary information as well. Got your main information along the bottom, so your tax code, gross pay, your national insurance and net pay. And then top tip is just to open the employee record from the top left of enter payments, so you don't actually lose your place and you can check anything within that employee that you might need to. So that's it for actually entering the payments. The next step of your payroll process would be your pay slips and your reports. So in terms of pay slips, there's 3 different kinds of pay slips. So you can have online pay slips. That's actually included in your payroll subscription. So you can upload those pay slips to Sage HR immediately or for a specific date. You've got the option to email pay slips from 50 Payroll. So you can send those via Microsoft Outlook or an internet mail provider. Or if you're a bit old school, you can print the pay slips off as well, just onto plain paper or stationery if you have it. We'll take a quick look at some recommended reports as well. So some recommended pre-update reports that are going to help you reconcile before you go ahead and update your records and get those locked in is your payment summary part 1 and your payment summary part 2. Now those are going to give you a gross to net, a breakdown of exactly what you've got in your unupdated pay run, so you can double check everything over before you actually go ahead and update records. We'll jump back into payroll now and do a bit of a demo on the pay slips and reports in 50 Payroll. So I've entered all my payments. I'm up here now. Like I mentioned earlier, if we did have the pensions module, we'd be doing a pensions assessment at this point. Once that was done, we're going to go into pre-update reports. So you can see we're here on the process map, here down your tasks on the left-hand side. If I go into my pre-update reports, you can see I've got some of the key reports already favorited, but I'll show you where to find those. I go down the left-hand side into my summary folder, I go down my list and run my payment summary part 1. You can see that has given me gross to net, so I would be saving that down, double checking over everything just to make sure everything was totally spot on. And my payment summary part 2 and my national insurance as well. And it's ideal to catch any mistakes at this point, because if you do before you update your records, then that means you're not going to have to roll back to correct anything. And then last but not least, I can get my laser pay slips. Now, I actually have some employees using online pay slips, but I do just want to save these down for my records anyways. So if you do have a mixer, you'll probably get this little message. You just want to say yes, and that will include all employees. So I can save those down for my records. Now, just a bit of a top tip around the report, and these will be linked, the steps to create one of these will be linked in the handout as well, so make sure to get those downloaded. But if you do have reports that you run in every pay period, you can create a report selection to show you how that looks. And what that will do, that will run all of your reports in one go. You can also save them as a singular file as well. Looks a little bit different, but you can see I've got a few different reports in my report selection, and they will show little tabs along the top. So that's just a little tip. And again, the steps to create one of those are on the handout, and we do have a really good webinar in the recordings uploaded as well. So that's it for my pre-update reports. Like I mentioned earlier, I do have some people using the online pay slips. So I'm going to upload online pay slips as well. So I've got my employees there. I'm going to publish them on a selected date. They get paid on the 30th. I'm going to publish those on the 26th. Hit on publish. And again, this is actually included in your payroll subscription. So if you haven't taken a look at Sage HR yet, definitely take a look when you get a second. Now you can see they've been successfully set to publish on my scheduled date. I just jump into Sage HR, my pay slips. You can see I've got my pending pay slips on there now, pending to be published on the 26th to my employees, and they'll get a notification about that as well if they've got it turned on. So that's all of my pay slips uploaded and my pre-update reports sorted. So what I'm going to do now, we'll just go through a little bit of a recap of that. So we've looked at our recommended reports, with payment summary part 1 and 2. We've ran a report selection as well. Again, that's linked at the bottom. What we're ready to do next is we're ready to go ahead and update our records. So updating your records is going to lock all of those figures in, move them from a pre-update into the history of the employee tab. Now, after you update your records, you might post a nominal link to your accounts if you use it, or if you've got any leavers for the period, you would do them at that point as well. So what we'll do, we'll jump back into payroll and we'll take a look at updating the records. And then what we'll do is we'll move on to the last steps and submit the FPS as well. So we've got all our pre-update reports saved and our pay slips uploaded. We can now go ahead and update our records. So we'll hit on update records. It'll give you a little reminder about your pre-update reports just to make sure you've got them all saved. Say yes to that. Would also strongly recommend you take a backup at this time. So if you do have any corrections to make, it's going to be really easy for you to restore back and get those sorted. I've already got a backup, so I'm just going to say next for now. I can check my employees on here. Once I'm happy, I will go ahead and finish. Now what you can see is when I've updated my records, my last updated date has now changed to the 30th of September 2025, which is exactly what we're wanting. And if I just go into an employee record, what you'll see if we check employee 1, you'll see that it's put that entry within the history tab of the employee record as well. Now the records are updated. You do your nominal link. You can see if we just get the process map back up. You can see nominal link you would do at this point. And if I had any levers this time round, I would go ahead and process them now. Now I don't do nominal link and I don't have any levers this time round, so I am going to go straight into my full payment submission. So one of the last steps of the main steps of your payroll process. I go into my full payment submission. You won't get this because we're just in a demo environment today. So I'm just going to tick that and continue. And what you'll see is we'll have my total liability. Now remember, I do have a new starter this month as well. So if I scroll down, you can see I've got my new starter's date on there as well, ready to be submitted to HMRC. Can print this page out if you want to keep it for your records, but don't worry, you don't have to at this point. You can always get it from the log. So if I just go ahead and get this submitted, and we should get a nice successful message as well. Again, you can always print these logs out. If you're not ready to print it out right then, can also get it from your e-submissions log. Now what you'll notice is my last FPS date is now updated as well. So I've got my last updated date and last FPS date matching, which is exactly what I'm wanting at the end of my pay run. I go into e-submissions and e-submissions log. You can see that that FPS is right at the bottom. I can print that out as well if I need to. So that is about it for the main steps of our payroll process. Just to run through a little bit of a recap before I pass you back over to Duncan. So we've updated our records, seen that go into the history tab of the employee. And then finally, we have submitted our FPS over to HMRC on or before our pay date. You can see with the FPS, what's included. So we've seen our starter information on there. We've got our employee details, our payment subject to tax, and any tax, NI, and student loan contributions that make up the liability. So that's it for your main 5 steps of your pay run. What I'll do now is I'll pass you back over to Duncan, who's going to run through some month-end tasks to finish off.
Thanks so much, Sarah. So yeah, we're going to finish off with another handy checklist, this time for tasks that you would complete at the end of each tax month. So just to get this started, let's have a look at the checklist. So 3 steps on this one. Number 1 is to run your P32 report. So this is a report that summarizes the deductions that you've made from your employee that make up your liability to pay to HMRC, as well as any adjustments to that liability due to things that you've reclaimed. The second step, where required, is to submit an EPS or Employer Payment Summary to HMRC. Now, this won't be required every month. It's only in specific circumstances. And one of the main ones is when you're reclaiming statutory payments. And the third task, which I won't be able to show you today, is to ensure that you make your payment to HMRC by the payment deadline. which is the 19th of the following month if you pay by cheque, or the 22nd of the month if you pay electronically. Now, something to keep in mind when I'm talking about month end is that we are looking at a payroll month or a tax month. So because the tax year begins on the 6th of April, each tax month starts on the 6th day of the calendar month and therefore ends on the 5th day of the following calendar month. So it's not usually a problem if you pay monthly, because you will know when your monthly pay date is. And once that pay run is completed, you're ready to move on to your month-end tasks. But if you are running a weekly, fortnightly, or 4-weekly payroll, it is worth checking, perhaps downloading our tax calendars that you can get from our help centre to ensure that you have completed and updated records for each pay date that falls into the relevant tax month. So for example, if I was paying weekly on a Friday, when I'm doing month end for tax month 6, I need to ensure that I've ran my payroll up to and including the 3rd of October, which would be the last Friday within that tax period. Now, before we go into the demo, I'd like to show you a bit of a breakdown of the information that appears on a P32 report. So these are the 23 items that you would see on it. And the first 4 items on a P32 are the total of the tax you've deducted from employees, the total of the student or postgraduate loans you've deducted, the kind of subtotal of those 2 items, and then number 4 is the gross national insurance. So this is the employee and employer contribution added together. And these values are what are reported to HMRC in the full payment submission that you've just seen Sarah demonstrate. Now, everything else really on the P32 may adjust the payment that's due. And for these items, you would usually need to send an EPS at the end of the month. Now, the first adjustment is down to employment allowance. Now, the EPS for an employment allowance claim is sent at the start of the year. So once you've set it up and you've claimed it for that tax year, you don't need to do a monthly submission to report employment allowance. That will be accounted for automatically. But you would need to send an EPS if you've reclaimed any statutory parental payments. So that's things like maternity, paternity, or adoption pay, plus any small employers relief or NI compensation on the statutory payments that you may be eligible to claim as a small employer. Larger payrolls may also need to pay into the apprenticeship levy. So apprenticeship levy payments are calculated automatically. You don't have to pay this if your annual pay bill is less than £3 million. And the end result is that you get the amount that you need to pay to HMRC. So let's take a look at that report in the programme. So I'll just bring the slides down. And just to pick up this demo, the last updated and last FPS date for my monthly paid employees is now displaying my September pay date for all of my active employees. And that then confirms that I have completed my pay runs for this period. Now, there are a few different places you can run a P32 report. One of them is the main reports option that you find above the employee list. So if you go into reports, there is a period end folder, and the P32 is this one here that I've added to my favorites. So it's the form P32 employer payment record. Or if you're on your payroll tasks, because you've just completed your pay run, if you look at this links section, you can see this, you'll see there is a direct link to the P32 report here. So I'm going to use that quick link to run the report, and it's going to ask me to enter criteria values. So in this box, you enter the tax month that you require the information for. So September is tax month 6. So I've entered from 6 to 6. You then click OK, and that's going to bring up a preview of the report. And then just zooming in a little bit for you here, you can see I've got my total PAYE income tax, haven't got any student or postgraduate loans. I've got my gross national insurance, And this month happens to be the first month where I've used up my employment allowance, so I'm not reclaiming anything this month. But what I am reclaiming is some SMP that I'm recovering, plus the small employers NIC compensation. I don't have any apprenticeship levy payments to make, but as a result of the amounts I've reclaimed, the total amount due has been adjusted down. So I do need to report the statutory pay that I've recovered in an EPS, so that HMRC are then expecting the payment that I'm ultimately going to make. So that's what I need to pay. You can print this report, of course, or maybe export it and save it as a PDF. And once you've ran your P32, program actually stores some of the key details in your company settings. So if I go to my company tasks and click settings and click the HMRC payments tab, you can see it's keeping track of the amount due. It's gone up this month. So this is the first month where I've used all of my employment allowance. I've claimed the £10,500 for the year. So this payment is slightly higher, even though I've recovered some statutory payments. So we now know how much we need to pay to HMRC. But one last task that I have, because I've recovered statutory pay, is to send an EPS submission. So this is a monthly submission. Even if you usually pay your staff weekly, you only do this once at the end of each month. And when you're ready to send it, you go to the e-submissions tasks. You would then go into employer payment summary, which takes you into the EPS wizard, and then you would select the reason why you're sending this. So the reason I need to select is that I'm adjusting the payment because I'm recovering statutory pay. You would also do this if you've suffered CIS deductions that you're reclaiming, or you're paying apprenticeship levy this period. And the other reason for sending an EPS is if you haven't paid any employees, so you haven't sent any payroll reports to HMRC, you need to do this EPS to inform them that no payment is due for this month. You can also inform them in advance if you know for sure that you're not going to be employing anyone. I'm going to click onto next, and it displays the tax month for this submission. I'd click next again, and then it shows me the statutory payments recovered for the tax year to date. So you might have noticed that these numbers are higher than what we saw on the P32 because they do reflect everything I've reclaimed since the 6th of April. So if you ever need to check that total, you can run your P32 for a range of tax months. You'll see that that all adds up. If you are dealing with CIS deductions suffered and you need to report them, you would manually enter the year-to-date value for that. And apprenticeship levy payments, if due, would appear in this box. But we're under the apprenticeship levy allowance, which means we have nothing kind of due this period. So if I complete this wizard, that takes me into the submission. You can ignore that warning. This is just because we're in a chaining room. And then the EPS can then be sent by clicking continue, checking your details and clicking submit, and then clicking submit once more, which then sends the information to HMRC. So if you do ever need to look back on what was included in your EPS, it is stored in the e-submissions log, which you can find just here. And you can see my EPS, what I've just sent. And if I check the details and then more details, that shows me the values that were included. So those are the steps complete in the program. So that was the P32 report that we ran. Obviously that has broken down and told us how much we need to pay. And because we had one of the adjustments that needs to be reported on an EPS, we've gone ahead and submitted that. That does need to be sent by the 19th of the following month. So the payment deadline for check payments. You tend to do this kind of towards the end of the month once you've completed all your pay runs for that period. So it's required if you're recovering statutory pay or CIS deductions suffered, you're reporting apprenticeship levy payments, or you haven't paid anyone and no payment is due. And that last step of the checklist, just make sure that you've made your payment to HMRC by the relevant deadline. Various pay methods are available for that. So with that, it's brought us to the end of what we're going to cover in today's webinar, but do stick around a few more minutes as I'd like to tell you more about the National Payroll Week badge that you can earn by attending these sessions live, and also where you can find further support with all things Sage Payroll. So this session is part of our National Payroll Week webinar series that's been running for the last 2 weeks to celebrate National Payroll Week. If you can attend at least 3 of the first 4 sessions live, plus the quiz, which will be on Thursday, the 11th of September, you qualify for a digital badge that will be sent to you by email, and you'll receive that by the end of this month. So you do need to attend live. That's how we log your kind of participation. And you do need to sign up with the same email address across the sessions. So a couple more sessions taking place this week, plus the quiz on Thursday. It'd be great to see you there and to see as many of you as possible earning that badge. Other support can be found on our online help centre, that's sage.co.uk/help, or you can access this by clicking any help icon in your software. So use this to search our knowledge base or to read our support guides, but also to find contact details for our support team. So if you do need to reach out to our team for help, go to the Help Centre first and choose the topic you need help with, and then you'll always find a Get in Touch link with the best way to contact our support. In addition to that, we have a great online learning resource at Sage University. You can access that at sageu.com. It's free to create your profile. Just find your way to the Sage 50 Payroll Learning Path. That's where you'll find a range of e-learning, certification, and bite-sized learning as well. As we are now out of time, we are going to wrap the webinar up there. So I'd like to thank you all for your time today. If you come into our session this afternoon on sickness and maternity, we look forward to seeing you there, and hopefully for some of the other sessions and the quiz taking place this week. Don't forget you'll receive a follow-up email later today with a link to the recording, and if you wouldn't mind dropping some feedback on the survey that appears, we would very much appreciate that. But with that said, we're going to call it a day there. So thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one. It's goodbye for now.